Hi everyone, this is Niamh here in my art journal channel. This is something slightly different because this is painting really large. So this is actually painting on an 18 by 11 inch canvas, and this is the layers that I have painted in my original painting. So I took photos of each step as it goes along. It looks ridiculously weird as it goes along, and it almost actually reminds me of anatomical painting, anatomy painting, sorry, with the layers of sort of muscle as it goes on. So you can see me starting from a very light base, starting with that yellow, going into magenta, adding some blue for shadows, putting some white back on to balance it up, and then going back in and adding detail and mark making, adding some pencil work over the top, and here is a final picture, and you can see how large it is. I was working on the floor to do this, which is why I've got this weird and random camera image as you can see from here. So I wanted to show you sort of the face on as I went through before I showed you the full process. So I started out drawing out my image really roughly on the canvas, just with a yellow pencil, Stabilo oil pencil. I found a skin tone colour that I just made as a base colour. The yellow, the magenta you can see here, and the blue that I'm using is actually a high flow acrylic. So it's actually a really watery liquid acrylic, which these three colours I got from Officeworks in Australia. So, but I know Golden does amazing high flow acrylics, so you can get them everywhere. If you don't have one, you can use you can get flow medium that you can add to your acrylic paint, so you can water them down a little bit. Basically, the reason I wanted it more fluid was I wanted to work in layers. Because this is something really new for me, working this large, I wanted to go slow. I wanted to add layers and take it a little bit of step at a time. So you can sort of see how the colors build up as I go along. I'm also not using my heat gun very much with this, just in the fact that it is so much larger. By the time I get to one area and then go back to another area, it's kind of already dried, which was really handy as well. I have also gone in and used some white paint just to kill down some areas that were very, very bright. So the red, while I liked it as a base tone, was very dark, and I wanted to just knock it back a little bit. One thing I did decide to do halfway through, which is something a little bit unusual for me, was to work on the eyes. And for those of you who've watched me for a little while, know that when you're doing faces, the eyes are really what makes it look human. So until you add your eyes in or finish your eyes off, put the black in of the pupil, put the little catch-all in, it's not necessarily going to look human-like. And I know a lot of artists, and you'll see it in sketches and so on, they'll actually start and do all the detail on the eyes first, and then they'll add the face around it. And that's the reason why. Particularly working on something this large, I just needed it to look a little bit more realistic before I kept going. So that's why I focused on my eyes. So you see I balanced off with a little bit of white, and now I'm going back in with some of my pink layers. So I had a bit of magenta and a little bit of the blushing colour. So I'm starting to use more opaque colours now with what I'm working with. I'm also started off with a really, really wide brush, and now I've reduced the size of the brush because I'm being a little bit more particular about where I'm putting the colours, how I'm balancing it up. You can see on the right hand side eye, it's a little bit bigger. One, because of the angle my canvas is sitting in to do the filming, because I just couldn't work it out without you seeing the back of my head. But I've sort of corrected that a little bit. I went back and put a little bit of yellow in just to sort of correct the size of it. So it is still a little bit bigger than the other eye, but that's okay. With the paint and the way I'm adding it now, I'm adding it in layers, and I'm being a little bit more loose and a little more abstract with it. So you can see sort of those dots of yellow and the scribbles of the different colours. So I'm thinking about the way I'm applying it in a little bit of a different manner. You see I'd been out for a walk earlier that day, which is explaining my attire. I don't usually dress like that. So now I'm going in with some of my, what I was standing up to grab were my Stabilo Woody pencils. So these are the really chunky Stabilo All pencils. They're the kid version of the pencil in reality. But they're really great for mark making, and something in particular as big as this, I wanted to have something a little bit chunky I could put some detail in. So you can sort of see me scribbling the different colours over the top. One thing I'm trying to do as much as possible is to keep similar colours that I've used in the background. So I'm sticking with sort of those yellows, reddy colours, purpley, bluey tones as I'm going in to create sort of my eyelids here. To create a little bit more shape around the nose, to add a little bit more detail to my lips. It's all sort of coming from the pencils. Then I'm going back in again with a finer brush to add some extra highlighting to my canvas, and to help shape up bits that need a little bit more detail to them. So it is a lot of, just like I do in my journal pages, it is a lot of working in layers and stepping back and having a look. And particularly when you're working this large, stepping back and having a look is really important. You'll see at the beginning I was very close, and in this case you'll sort of see me step back, come back, step back, come back, just to see if it's sort of all balanced and where it's going. Once I got to this stage, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do at the top of my page, whether I wanted whether I wanted to add in hair, or if I just sort of wanted the face emerging from the darkness a little bit. So I decided that's what I was going to do. I did know I wanted one side to be darker than the other, so I started off with sort of the Marines on one side. I do apologise, but trying to get over to the other side was a bit difficult. And then I sort of had the lightest shade on the other side. You can see the size of my brushes are also really reducing as I go along, and that was a really interesting journey in itself. You know, quite often I'll sort of start off with a smaller brush because I'm a bit scared about using my wider brushes, but in this case starting with the wider brushes really helped to get that color on, and then I could add in the detail afterwards. So with the mouth, you know, adding in the little white highlights of the lips, adding in details on my eye, blending up the colors of the eye too, because if you look at eyes, they're not just one flat color. So I've got a little bit of green, I've got blues, I've got a light blue, I've got a dark blue, I've got a little bit of orangey color in the eyes. My reflections in the eyes, just to make it look a little bit more glassy over the top. So it's not just using that one little dot of white in the eye, but actually adding a little bit more white in different areas as well. Same with the Cupid's bow, you know, I've got a little bit of white there, and just trying to balance that up so it doesn't look so stripy. I did struggle with my my bulbous nose. She's got a very red nose. I did actually, once this was finished, go back and knock that back a little bit so it wasn't quite as round and as prominent on the page. Which worked out in the end. So it really is about looking at what you've got and how you're going to sort of blend it all together. Once I got to this stage, I was still playing around a lot with my finer paintbrushes and my pencils, adding in a little bit of detail, adding in eyelashes. So this is where I got my liquid black gloss spray out, which again is an acrylic high flow medium. You can use acrylic ink to do this as well, but it was really good to get that out with a really fine brush to create eyelashes, and I really enjoyed doing that process. It's the first time I do occasionally put eyelashes and things, but you know, and eyebrows, but actually thinking about how do I actually make this look more hair-like, what brush will I use to do that, and it made a huge difference using the right equipment at the right time to do this. So while quite often I'm all about slapping my paint on and not worrying about it, it was really interesting how in this process I was starting to think about, well, which tool would be more successful to do this? Which one should I be using? And then you think of, at the very beginning of this, I was starting off using like a 2-inch brush to put the paint on, and now I'm sort of down to using a fine liner brush to put the sort of drops of ink on. I decided I wanted to really sort of add a bit of extra interest to one side of my page or canvas, so I got the leftover ink that I had and I dripped it down from her eye, so it looked like the eyelashes were extending. I also decided I wanted to do that for my top of my page as well. Canvas, sorry, I keep forgetting, canvas. So I used my black ink to drip from the top of the canvas as well. I also wet it a little bit just so it'd help it run. So you can help do drips in two ways. You can, you know, be very brave and just let it run wherever. You can use your brush to help kind of guide it, or you can use a little bit of, you know, spray your water on. If it's starting to stop and look a bit stocky, you can spray a little bit of water on and help it run as well. When I got to the very end, and I don't think I got this on camera, I sort of stepped back from it and looked at it a little bit and thought, I just need something else. So I actually ended up getting my black and white acrylic ink and splatting it across the page. And I think that really finished the piece off. You can sort of see where those fine lines went in. You can see the chunky work underneath. You can see the sketching of the pencil in the close-up of the eyes. You can see the different mix of colours I have used. So it was lots and lots of fun to do, pushing myself outside that comfort zone of working small on my journal. This piece is now hanging up in my classroom, which I really love, so I get to look at it every day as well. So thank you so much for coming on this journey with me, something a little bit different, and until next time, bye for now.